For those who don't know, my name's Dave, and what we're going to be doing today is a walk between a couple of the older, shall we say, settlements that there are here on the Wirral. All three of them, which are Thingwall, where we are now, Barnston, in that direction, and Storeton, are all mentioned in Domesday. So they've been here for quite a while. So the first bit is actually where we are now. We're more or less on the edge of the historic settlement of Thingwall, what they call the historic core, which stretches that way a little bit. And there's another element over at Mill Lane there. So we're going to set off along the road. Now as we go along, I want you to take a note of the high ground, particularly on the right as we walk along, okay? Because we're going to move on to one of the township boundaries. At the moment we're in the township of Thingwall, which is in the parish of Woodchurch, which is a huge parish here on the Wirral. We're going to be moving on to the other township in that parish, which is Barnston, and then move on to Storeton, which is in an entirely different parish altogether. Okay then, let's set off. Okay, well, as you can see, we're more or less at the top of this sort of ridge, this bit of a hill. This is possibly, and we have to use the word possibly because no one's actually done any archaeology up here, the site of the meeting place for this part of the Wirral. Okay? Thingwall, the local thing, the speaking place. The highest point is that nice little rounded hillock, hummock, whatever you want to call it, just behind us. Okay? Whether or not that's where they actually stood and gave out the whatever they needed to do, the laws, the rulings, we'll never know. Where we are now, this is the township boundary between Thingwall and Barnston. Okay? It used to run in this direction. Okay? It's not obvious because for me, when I first started looking in the area, the township boundary, the obvious place is the watercourse just down there. But it's not, this is it. This is the boundary we're on now. And as you can see, the fields all along here, this was the Cross Hill fields as recorded on the tide maps. Okay? So you've got a big flat area over there, okay? And then you've got the mound just behind us in that direction. Okay, so here we are in a place called Barnston Dale. This, believe it or not, used to be quite the holiday destination in the 20s and 30s. And people used to get trains to Storeton Railway, walk along the road a little bit. They used to get the bus to near where the Fox and Hounds are. And this used to be a place where they'd come and walk and picnic and things like that. The road we're on at the moment that has the name Storeton Lane. It goes from Barnston to Storeton. Okay? Now we remember from the last walk we did, I mentioned about roads where the name suddenly changes. Okay? Well, just a little bit further up there, literally where the houses along here end, that's the parish boundary between Barnston and Storeton. One of the other things we covered or saw on the last walk was a dead hedge. Now there's another type of hedge called a living hedge. Okay? And in these, what you do is you have the sapling, and what you do is you cut it almost all the way through and then bend it in the direction that you want the hedge to grow. If you look over on the other side of the road, you'll see an example of that all the way along here, where the local farmers are still maintaining that tradition. It's a very, very cheap and useful way of constructing a hedge that's going to keep animals in or out depending on which way they're coming from. If you look just to the left, you'll see a green gate. Okay, that is what today passes as the boundary between the parish of Woodchurch and the parish of Bromborough. Several years ago, I decided to pick Thingwall as a sort of centre point because it's a meeting place, right, where people gather the thing. But people need to be able to get there from the different settlements dotted around it. If you had to walk with your family and probably a few animals from Storeton to Thingwall, which of these two routes are you likely to have taken? They're both feasible, but one is slightly better than the other. Okay? And I'll leave it for you to try and figure out which one you would have taken. Okay? Go. Finger posts. These are actually earlier than the milestones, in fact, to direct people across the field. These are probably 19th century. Here we are, Storeton. We're on the edge of, well, this part of it is really called Little Storeton. Okay? Storeton, in my mind, is one of the places that's often overlooked on the Wirral. It's actually a very important point. It marks a bit of a crossroads. Storeton became a very important area to control in the 14th, 15th centuries. Where you hear of the Stanleys committing all sorts of offences and crimes in order to gain control of the manor, which they eventually do. Okay? But at some point, their influence wanes and Storeton stopped being quite as important as other areas on the Wirral. What we're going to do now, after leaving Storeton, is head across the fields. Now, I mentioned earlier about that being the Storeton Lane Station Road that we walked along being one of the routes that would have taken people from here over towards Barnston and then Thingwall. This is another one. Okay? I will see which one you think is the one you would have preferred to take if you'd have had to go to Thingwall for a meeting. So, if everyone's ready, we'll head across the fields. Where we are at the moment, we've just come over one water course. Anyone want to take a guess of where this leads to? The Fender. Right? It starts just over there in that wood. Comes all the way along and then ends up draining into what used to be Bidston Moss. So this is the start of it. And you can see just how deep it is. And so obviously at some point, a lot more water rushed through this than we see today. So this is the start of one of the water courses that feeds into Bidston Moss, which then feeds into Wallasey Pool. If you look on this sandstone pillar, which is obviously part of a gate, you can see this mark, an arrow with a line across the top. It's an Ordnance Survey mark, an old one. Some people call it a levelling up point. So before we had GPS and everything like that, people would come out with the little telescopy things and the tables, and they would use these marks as a way of ensuring that their surveying was correct. But you see them dotted about on varying places. But they tend to be added to places which the Victorians thought, that's never going to change. It's never going to be moved. This will always be what it is. Last feature of the day, the field just behind you there. What it seems to be is the Oxford Archaeology did a dig there around about 2016, and they came across charcoal and fragments of Roman pottery. So it does seem that we do have something out in a rather ordinary, plain-looking field here on the Wirral. Okay, so here's another finger post, this time with 3 fingers on, showing to Barnston Dale, Storeton, which is where we've just come from, and then on towards Landican. Unlike the one near Storeton, this has actually got details of who built it, or who basically constructed it, all along the side here. So you do get slightly different types on the Wirral. Some are plain, and this one has details on. But again, you can see that it's been checked by the Wirral Footpaths and Open Space Society. They come along and make sure that they've not been damaged, and they do a renovation programme, so they do repaint them at intervals as well. And I think this one will be due for a touch-up in the next year or two. Okay everyone, thanks for coming along. This is the end of the walk back at the Basset Hound. I hope you've enjoyed it. These are some of the older routes that we have on the Wirral. Along the way we looked at varying things such as the site of the home gang in Barnston Dale. We've passed through parts of Storeton and again passed along where a Roman charcoal kiln quite possibly was discovered by Oxford Archaeology. Okay? So as you can see on the sign here, there's details of the thing, the meeting place here at Thingwall. So thank you all again for coming along. I hope to see you on the next one.
Thanks, Dave.